Hi everyone, welcome back. This is John Williams, and today we're going to talk about a subject that people ask me about a lot. It comes up over and over again, and that's what is composable commerce and what's the difference between composable commerce and MACH architecture. If there's one thing for sure in our industry, we are filled with jargon and new terms, and they pop up every week. We started with SaaS, then Headless, and then MACH, and now we have Composable Commerce, which Gartner talked about probably this time last year in a paper that they released. Their job was to basically take some of the concepts that have been going on in terms of the technical stack around MACH and the other pieces of technology that are out there, and start to assemble it from a more business framework to allow you to understand how to build commerce experiences from components, or what they called package business capabilities. So we'll take a look at that, we'll walk through it, and hopefully at the end of this, you won't be just filled with even more confusion from more jargon. Okay, let's get started on composable commerce. I'm going to use the model that Gartner used at the very beginning of their paper, which I thought was really useful. So what they did is they divided up e-commerce experiences into three different dimensions. The first one was the technical stack, so that's what's the e-commerce site running on. The second one was the customer journeys, so what are those phases that a customer goes through while on your e-commerce site? And then the last one was around capabilities, so what capabilities did you need during those customer journeys? And if you think about it, those capabilities were delivered from a tech stack. So let's just double click on the technical stack. We can divide that into three layers. So you've got the data layer, where your databases live and your backend systems would live. You've got your logical layer, that's where all your business rules would be executed. And then you've got your experience layer, your presentation layer. This is where all of the experiences for your e-commerce site would happen. So previously, you would buy an e-commerce platform or an e-commerce suite where all the business capabilities would be provided to you in a fixed tech stack. So they would all be pre-integrated. They would all have their own definitions in terms of their where they fit into the customer journeys, and you'd get that all out the box. Where you spent your time was usually in the presentation layer, or maybe a little bit in the next tier down, but usually in the presentation layer, to basically bring your own brand online and define the experience that you want. And this is where ultimately the monoliths would start to form. So it doesn't matter how well architected the system was previously into different layers and how much effort they put into making sure the modules of code were separated, you'd end up fusing all of this together as one giant monolith. This is where Headless came to the rescue. By decoupling the presentation layer away from the logical layer using an API, it meant you could do all of that user experience development without actually affecting the rest of the system. So deployment was easy, development was easy. Plus you had the added benefit that you could actually do user experience development in lots of different devices and lots of different channels without having to replicate the whole vertical stack. Another great benefit of using the headless approach is because everything is delivered through an API, and the user experience layer, the presentation layer, brings those APIs together, it means that you can source those APIs from anywhere. You don't have to go to the same vendor. You don't have to have an e-commerce suite and pull all of their APIs. You can actually get it from different suppliers. So your CMS can be from one supplier, your e-commerce platform core APIs can be from another. You can even go as far as just replacing a basket using an API from a single vendor. This is now where we can start talking about MACH. MACH is actually how the technical stack in this instance is delivered. MACH means microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless. So it means that that stack actually is built and delivered using those principles. So if we take a look at composable commerce, what Composable Commerce does is it goes beyond just looking at the tech stack, so the technical approach like MACH, and it starts to look at it from a business perspective. It starts to look at this model and divide up the things that are important to a business. So looking at the business capabilities. Now, business capabilities could be delivered by one bigger API, so what we'd call a macro API, or it could be delivered by multiple microservices from one of the MACH vendors. And this is where the tricky bit comes in when you're looking at suppliers. Composable architecture or composable commerce is about looking at the entirety of the system in terms of business capabilities, so things that are important to the business. Although MACH makes it much easier to build composable commerce solutions, it doesn't mean that you actually have to use all MACH technology. This is particularly important, or the advantage, when it comes to older monoliths, because it allows you to basically wrap the monolith in an API, in terms making it headless, and then start picking off pieces of functionality using, say, a MACH vendor to replace, say, a basket. The downside, I would argue, is that with this approach, you could replace business capabilities with systems that are not MACH systems or systems that don't follow modern day development principles. And you could end up in a worse position. You would end up with a Frankenstein system that just doesn't work for you. So I'm going to refrain from going into too much detail about applications that cloudwash or pretend that they're MACH. So ultimately, composable commerce is about defining user experiences using package business capabilities. And MACH architecture is about the technical delivery of those components and how you build a system using technical best practices. So hopefully that helped. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of what composable commerce is, what MACH architecture is, and what the differences are between them and how they relate to each other. If it was helpful, please press that like button, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more about headless architectures and MACH architecture. And for now, it's time to say thanks and goodbye.